My name's Dave Neff, and I'll be your MC this morning. I'm president of the Parsons College Foundation Fund, and we'd like to welcome you to the second annual Parsons College Wall of Honor and Dedication Ceremony. We're honored to have such a great turnout for this event, to recognize members of our student body who have gone on into their chosen professions and have made a mark, not only on Fairfield, the state of Iowa, the country, but also in the world. 1 year ago, on this weekend, we inducted the inaugural class and honored the following individuals. Wes Bartlett, 1938, Kiwanis International President. Lee Gobble, who was scheduled to be with us this morning. I haven't seen his smile yet, but he will be here. Haberdasher Emeritus. Ryan McClinn, class of '69, Senator, Mayor of Dayton, Ohio. Obie Nelson, class of '46, and we have a son, Dick, and daughter Marilyn that are with us this morning. So Dick and Marilyn, if you're here, a moment, please. And Katie, excuse me. Okay, so we have Nelson family representation here also. Thank you very much for making the trip this morning. Legendary coach, Alan Paul, 1967, he's a state senator. Edward Rogowski, 1965, president of St. Ambrose University in the Quad Cities. Dr. Robert Scott III, class of '63, research physician. Many of you may remember, if you weren't in school, Marshall Wallace, class of '64, stage and television star. Burl Whittington, class of '52, Shell oil executive. And this year, we have a second outstanding class to share with you today. Each year with our spring e-newsletter, we open a nomination period and invite alums to present names of Parsons College students to be considered for the next October Wall of Honor induction ceremony. Our committee consists of Dr. Robert L. Tree, who's on stage with me at this time, Nancy Wertinen, John Braidwood, John Blackstock, and myself. We consider the names, come to a final consensus, and the nominations are announced in the summer e-newsletter. The vision for the ceremony was shared with us by John Blackstock, class of '64, who we'll meet shortly. John was also the editor of our Parsons e-News, and he announced the idea that at the formal dedication of the Alumni Hall here in September of 2008. The recommendation to form a Parsons College Foundation was made by John Braidwood, who is also in attendance today, class of '68. At the all-class reunion in the summer of 2003. So this has been an ongoing process. I'm just so pleased that it's grown to where it has. Since the announcement of the foundation, John has worked tirelessly to raise funds to assist in construction of the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, where we're hosted this morning. Total dollars raised from alumni, faculty, and staff during that time period exceed $200,000. Parsons has been very generous to make this facility happen. You'll find the names in the brickyard just outside the main entrance to the atrium on the north side as you exit the building. Nancy Wertinen brought the recommendation to form a Parsons College Alumni Association to a reunion, and currently there are over 2,000 names of alumni in a database. Just think of that. Parsons closed 1973. And now we still have over 2,000 names that we're communicating with. This serves as the heart of information sharing. Nancy is assisted by Doug Marion and Ken Rice. Nancy and Ken are both with us this morning in managing the information and development of a Parsons College alumni website. If you haven't had a chance to see this yet, you will today. Ed Longenecker, also our committee member, will be available to show those interested in a quick look at the website during the luncheon today and add names to the list. Marshann Ross, who is present today, also a committee member and has coordinated all of the receptions and the luncheon today. Dr. Robert Tree has provided a sounding board for the evolution of this entire process. We will forever be indebted to all these individuals who have given so generously of their time and talent. Without their energy, enthusiasm, and passion, these events and communication opportunities would not be possible. Please join me as I ask each of these names that I have just read to stand, and let's recognize them with a warm round of applause. We would also like to recognize those faculty, staff, and trustees at this time time who are present, would you please rise and remain standing? If you hold your applause until all have been recognized. Charles Barnett, admissions. Lee Gobble, Board of Directors, Trustees. Ray Ham, Assistant Women's Basketball Coach and Admission Staff. Dr. Biff Coomer, Physical Education. David Neff, Physical Education. Bob Spencer, Head Women's Basketball Coach. Robert Tree, History and Dean of the College. And Vera Price Young, Physical Education. It wouldn't be appropriate if we didn't recognize those folks who have been with Parsons the longest. We'd also like to recognize our earliest graduates and our most recent graduate. Once again, I haven't seen Lee Gobble. He said he's going to be here, but many times being a few moments late makes a better entrance for me. Class of 1937. Then we have a tie with Dean Gabbard and Vera Young, class of 46. And our most recent graduate, our final graduating class, Pat Arns Peck, 1973. Pat, if you would stand, please, and be recognized. We would also like to recognize the staff and administration of the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center for their assistance in the preparation for the event. Our Mayor, Ed Malloy's remarks were originally scheduled to be now, but they are moved to the luncheon time. Now is the moment you've been waiting for the second annual induction to Parsons College Wall of Honor. The procedure will be, I will call the presenter to the podium, and after brief remarks, our honoree will be called to the stage to be presented their own personal Wall of Honor plaque by Dr. Robert Tree. A photo will be taken in this area of the inductee, presenter, and Dr. Tree. The honoree will then be escorted to one of the seats on the far side of the stage, and they will remain there until the completion of the program. All posthumous or initiates unable to attend will be represented by family members or friends. Now for our first inductee. I would like to call to the stage Fred Albertson and Phil Como, who will provide the induction for Roger Bachman posthumously. Phil and Fred. Sam, if we could have the photo of Roger Bachman presented. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Fred Albertson. Roger and I went to high school together in Westfield, New Jersey, and we were best buddies. We were both new to the area, and one day we were in class, and Roger slipped me a note and asked me to be his friend. And that's how it started, a beautiful friendship. Everyone liked Roger as soon as they met him. He had that charisma about him. And soon there were 7 of us guys that hang around together. And Westfield is a beautiful place to grow up. It's over 200 years old. It's beautiful colonial homes and a nice downtown area of quaint little shops. And there's always something to do. There are football games and basketball games. And life was very good then. No one heard about Vietnam. We didn't know where it was or even what it was. And life was full of promise. In a few years, we'd be off to college and leave our mark upon the world. Roger was a true and loyal friend. He was always there when you needed him. And he had this enthusiasm for life, that even the most common event would be a great adventure when you were with him. He was an important part of my life. When he died, my wife Laura and I were expecting our second child. We didn't know whether it would be a boy or a girl, but decided if it was a boy, we named him Roger Joseph. A month later, Farley was in the delivery room, and I was sitting in the waiting room. And Farley's obstetrician, Dr. Healy, was the father of a girl Roger and I had gone to school with. And he came out crying, and he said, "You have a son." And that's the effect Roger had on us. He brought out the very best in us. When Roger died, the gang got together. We went down to Arlington National Cemetery. We followed the horse-drawn caisson up the hill called Pipe and Drum past the tomb of the unknown soldier, which is near Roger's grave. And Roger was buried. We walked back down the hill. At that time in my life, I had this great fear. I thought I would grow up and so many important things would happen to me that Roger's memory would just become a tiny little speck that would eventually disappear. And I would forget him. But that never happened. Last year was the 40th anniversary of Roger's death. And I called the old gang, Bill Easton in Georgia, Don Ackley in North Carolina, Bob Bowe in Texas, Tom Greco in Pennsylvania. We hadn't seen each other in over 40 years or talked to each other, and I didn't know what to expect. When I said it's Roger's 40th anniversary, I was going down to Arlington. One by one, they said, I'll be there. And we met in the visitor center and went up the hill and laid flowers on Roger's grave. And I looked around and I saw there were a lot of changes. There are 3 new monuments yards away from where Roger's buried. One monument is dedicated to the soldiers who died in Iran, trying to free the hostages in 1980. Another monument is dedicated to the crew of the Space Shuttle Columbia. The 3rd monument is dedicated to the Space Shuttle Challenger. Roger's in a good neighborhood. I still live in Westfield, and I live on the street that Roger and I used to walk down on our way home from school, and the memories are still there. At Christmas time, I remember Roger and I walking through the snow in downtown Westfield, going from shop to shop, looking for presents for our parents. When I see children ice skating at Waskin Park in town, I remember those windy, wintry days when Roger and I would skate there after school. When we came home from college, Roger and I would get together and tell me all about Parsons College and his fraternity and the new friends he made. And he told me about this new chapter in his life. The final chapter was Vietnam. I was recently in contact with the fellow who was with Roger when he was killed. Jim Daniels was Roger's radio man, and I was next to him when Roger was shot. He was so upset that the next day they granted an emergency 7-day leave. And I realized that once again, Roger was a new friend when he died. From that day, he passed me that note. I saw Roger's journey through life. Growing up in Westfield High School, the happy times at Parsons College, the tragic time in our country's history when he went to Vietnam and served bravely. Roger Bachman is an honor to the town of Westfield, Parsons College, and the friends he made along the way. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Phil Como. I left Fairfield and Parsons College in May of 1967 with Roger Bachman and the rest of the class of '67. I'm back today to witness and take part in Roger's induction into the Wall of Honor, a tribute that is richly deserved. Roger's relatively brief life provides graphic proof that quality often trumps quantity. In his life, Roger Bachman was a great success, a good son and brother, successful as a student, and ultimately a great campus leader at Parsons. His natural leadership skills were evident as he served as president of both his fraternity and the Interfraternity Council. Roger chose to serve his country following graduation, a path Parsons graduates. In Vietnam, Roger distinguished himself by earning the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart, again demonstrating great leadership skills. In the process, Roger Bachman went out did the best he could for America, and at the age of 24, gave his life in service to his country. If you permit me a personal aside, I am now 65. I've lived in America for more than 40 years, since I came home from Vietnam. I've had an enjoyable professional career, married well, experienced the joys of parenthood, children's weddings, and grandchildren. Roger Bachman never had the chance to experience any of what I did. In the sweet springtime of his life, Roger forfeited his future for his country, and his family, friends, and nation are the lesser for it. In his lifetime, Roger Bachman showed us greatness and wonderful promise. I have thought of him often since those days. I last saw Roger for an enjoyable New Year's gathering on December 31st, 1967. In those uncertain times, we enjoyed ourselves and looked ahead. It has been 41 years since the angels escorted Roger on a short journey to paradise. My faith tells me that his spirit is with us today. So here in Fairfield, in the shadow of our alma mater, we take this moment to offer Roger Bachman a simple greeting. Welcome home. Thank you.
Receiving on behalf of Roger Bachman is Sister Barbara Stanley. If you would please come to the stage. Dean Gabbard is our next initiate. Gene Lutke, I'd like to welcome him to the stage to provide the presentation.
Hello everyone. As Dave said, I'm Gene Lutke, and though I'm a Fairfield native, I really didn't know Dean Gabbard until I started working at the Fairfield Ledger, which surprisingly he had already worked at for 31 years before I started. But I was this young kid, they took me in right straight out of college, and Dean immediately gave me a lot of great impressions of what the newspaper career is all about. I worked with him for 16 years, and he always impressed me with his professionalism, his caring, his fairness. There was never a slant to his story. He presented the facts as they were. And every person who walked through the door was treated just the same, regardless what walk of life they came from. Sometimes it really pained him to write some of the stories, and such as it was with the Parsons College closing stories. I remember I'd worked at the newspaper for 5, 6 years, something like that, and I remember the professionalism that I thought he had in presenting the story. He did his interviews, he gathered the facts, he wrote the story, and I know it pained him very much with emotion about the closing of Parsons. But he did it as a professional, as a newspaper professional should do, and that always impressed me. I think of Dean having 3 real loves in life. First of all, his family. He and Joyce had such a great relationship, marriage, and of course his 2 of his daughters, Lisa and Gretchen, are here today to share with us. A second love, obviously, is the newspaper. He gave his entire life to the newspaper. That was his only career in his life, and I'm following the same thing. It's the only career I've ever had in the newspaper. So I remember Dean often, he was always at work before I ever got there, even if I went early, he was there because he stopped at the Maid-Rite every morning, 5:30, with Bob White having a cup of coffee, and that was the start of his day. And so I think probably he worked over 60, 65 hours during a week. I don't know, he could tell you better, but he was always there doing things for the community. And it wasn't just the newspaper, it was all the other activities and groups and everything else that he did. The third love, obviously, is Parsons College. He's the man who probably recorded more history and heritage of Parsons, covering sports activities, other activities, and we can pay tribute to him for recording Fairfield's and Parsons College history for all those years. And of course, Dean's retirement year, with his book writing, his travels, teaching, and everything else he did on his home on the Mississippi River that he loved so much. And I'd said three loves, but probably the fourth is the Mississippi River. It's just like the program says, like Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along, and that's what Dean's career has been. So I was fortunate to work with Dean for 16 years. I attribute him to giving me my love of the newspaper. I'm at 41 years now. I will not make 47 years like he did. I'm just pretty much going to guarantee you that. But also his love of Fairfield history and stories. I remember him telling stories, especially, and one of Obie Nelson's children is here, but stories of Obie Nelson, and I never ever knew Obie. I wish I would have, but I got to know the man through Dean's stories, just like Tib Young, Vera is here, and many others that came before us. I was fascinated with those stories that he told about Parsons College and Fairfield history. And I'm continuing with the Fairfield history, and I'll greet you this afternoon at the museum for everybody that will be there. So I'd like to present today a person I think is most deserving, a person who's recorded Parsons College history, heritage, and the lives of so many people over the years, and absolutely a professional newspaper man. So with that, I'd like to present Dean Gavin.
Robert Gamreth will be our next initiate. Presenter will be Bob Gamreth, Jr. Please come to the stage, Bob.
Good morning. A little too close, I guess. Anyway, the Gamreth family would certainly like to congratulate all the inductees to the Wall of Honor. It's a great honor. I know my dad feels that way, and I just want to congratulate everybody. A little history on my father. He moved to Fairfield when he was 6 months old, and he moved with his parents from Sioux City, Iowa to Fairfield, and his father set up a veterinarian practice here in Fairfield. He graduated from Fairfield in 1937 and entered Parsons College shortly after. While at Parsons, he was elected vice president of his freshman class and president of the sophomore class. He worked 2 summers recruiting students for Parsons and was a member of the TKE fraternity. During World War II, he served nearly 4 years in the Army Air Corps, which we know as the Air Force today. Following the war, he was in the Federal Reserves for about a year. In 1946, Dad started Gamreth Insurance, which is now Gamreth, Doyle and Associates. In 1947, Dick Ain, who was a high school classmate and friend of Dad's, convinced him to assume command of the 34th Infantry Service Company of the Iowa National Guard. This was the beginning of 24 years of service in the Guard, and he retired in 1969 as a Major General. I think you would enjoy a couple of stories about O.B. Nelson, since some of you didn't know O.B. and his children are here today. He coached and taught at Parsons, and he was inducted into the Wall of Honor last year. Dad and O.B. served in the Guard together and roomed together at Parsons, at summer camps for over 20 years. O.B. was Dad's deputy. One day my dad was trying to take a quick nap, and O.B. came into their tent and started filling Dad in on his day. It was just shortly after lunch, and these were big tents that housed quite a few officers. O.B., it was his way to kind of pace back and forth when he talked, and he kept opening his footlocker, kind of nervous, and would slam his footlocker, and then continue to talk to my dad. He apparently wanted something out of his footlocker, but while he was talking, he couldn't remember what he wanted. So, about 3 times of slamming that footlocker, he said to my dad, "Bob, look what I've done." Dad looked in the footlocker. It was full of shaving cream. All over, everything was in O.B.'s footlocker. In true O.B. style, he stripped naked. He reached down, grabbed lots of shaving cream, lathered his body. He put on his gun belt, and he paraded across the field to the showers. And this is a true story. Of course, his troops were there too, and they got to witness this to their amusement. Another time when Dad and O.B. were at Fort Benning, Georgia to officer school, O.B. had a habit of awakening very early and proceeded to wake my dad. He said, "Bob, I'm going to call my wife Eunice." Dad said, "Well, go ahead. Why do you have to wake me in order to call your wife?" O.B. then opened the barracks window and yelled as loud as he could, "Eunice!" This was typical O.B. humor. Those of you that knew O.B. know God only made one. In conclusion, except for the 4 years of World War II, Fairfield has been home some 87 years to my dad. This town has been very good to my dad and our family, including Parsons College. I believe Dad has given a lot back to Fairfield and Parsons and the community, In addition, he and Mom have raised 4 children, none of whom have fallen off the cliff yet. He is honest, dependable, and those of you who know him, he has a quick wit, and he loves to tell a good story. It is a great honor and privilege to introduce my father, Bob Gierman.
I want to thank Dave and all the people that had anything to do with giving me this honor. I'm going to take maybe 4 or 5 minutes of your time. The first thing I'm tickled to death to see one of my old friends, Dean Gabbard. 10, 12 years ago, he wrote my obituary. Now he can finish it. I wasn't going to say this, but I can't think of any other time when I could get all Parsons College. I am the guy that closed Parsons College, and I have regretted it all my life. It was the toughest thing I ever did. But I told it to one of the members, and he came to me today and he thanked me. I want to explain why Parsons College was closed. Roberts had lost accreditation. The newspapers, Look magazine, everything was called Flunk Out U. They dropped thousands of students. By the time I went on the board after he left, there was up to 5,000 down to 700. Roger Lund was the chairman of the board. I was the vice chairman, acting chairman here now. It got to the spring of the year and we had paid all our bills, all the faculty and everything else. The business manager was one of the best I ever knew. He agreed wholeheartedly that it was impossible. We were losing students. We could not go through the summer. Now this is the key to the whole thing. By law, we had to graduate each senior and turn them over to the University of Iowa. Now that, I doubt you do. Every student's records also had to be sent to the University of Iowa for record. And that was done. It's a sad thing. I've lived with it for all these years. But now I hope you all understand it. Thank you very much. And Dave, thank you for all you've done.
Dr. Biff Coomer, I have the pleasure today to be the presenter on this. Biff, would you like to come up? You can have a seat next to Dr. Tree. There's your stuff on there. Okay, go. summer of 1965, as a freshman at Parsons College, one of my first classes was coaching track and field. Coach Joe Lutz was teaching the class, and this is where I first met Biff Coomer. We were both physical education majors at Parsons, and little did I know that we would become lifelong friends. Biff graduated from Parsons in 1968 and became intramural director for the college and joined the physical education department staff. The following year, he was ready to begin his graduate program at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. At Parsons, the position of intramural director was open and accepting applications. Dr. Robert Tree was the dean of the college at that time, and he provided the interview and offered the job to me in Biff's year of absence. Biff returned to Parsons to be intramural director for an additional year, and then returned to the University of Utah, where he received his PhD in recreation education in 1973. He had already accepted the position on the faculty of Parsons when the announcement of the closing of the college was made in the spring of '73 that Bob just explained to us. Since Parsons closed, Biff accepted the position in the recreation education faculty at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. He held that position for 2 years until he was contacted by former Parsons president Carl Chrysler to come to the Western Kentucky University, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and teach in their recreation education department. Biff has reflected on Parsons as his springboard, the opportunity to become a college faculty member, opening the door to graduate school, and moving to the level of a tenured professor. Those individuals who opened these doors were Charlie Barnett, who we hopefully be here for lunch today, Dr. Robert Tree, dean of the college, Dr. Ken Rutger, chemistry professor, Dr. Harry Burris, professor of physical education, and Dr. John Ward, chairman of the physical education department. These men saw the potential with our honoree and gave him guidance and the support of reaching for the graduate degrees, coming back to Parsons with a master's degree in recreation education from the highly respected University of Utah program. Under the direction of Dr. Owen Hunter, Parsons College provided the faculty who worked for the college to give the students the opportunity to encourage them to be successful in life. The Where the Boys Are WTBA organization was founded on the campus, and Biff was one of the original members. This social organization evolved and continues to this day to be a very cohesive group of individuals who all became very successful in their chosen field and still keep in contact through reunions and support for each other. The summer months would be free from teaching, and our honoree's lust for adventure has carried him with the Iowa Mountaineers to such mountain climbing expeditions as Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, Mount Blanc, the Matterhorn in Switzerland, South American mountains, and the Inca Trail in South America in 1986. From 1989 until 2008, he canoed the Canadian Arctic on 2 to 8 week trips. His children have both had a chance to experience one or more of these Canadian expeditions. During these expeditions, he has encountered the following contacts with wild animals. In Africa, charged by a bull elephant. A rhino hit the side of his Land Rover. He has killed a spitting cobra, and in the Arctic, he's experienced 6-hour caribou migrations with herds of over 6,000 animals. Encounters with polar, grizzly, and black bears. So this is a man who's not afraid to step out of bounds and see what's going to happen in the world. One of the recent honors bestowed upon Biff was the naming of a new recreation building in the Western Kentucky campus, the Coomer Little Recreation Center. Biff's mother is still living in Milwaukee, where she has celebrated her 100th birthday this year, and every 3 weeks he goes for a 3-day visit with her. His son is with the Park and Recreation Department in Warren County, Kentucky, and his daughter teaches in New York. He currently resides in Bowling Green, Kentucky during the winter months, and at Tree Haven, close to Rhinelander, Wisconsin, in the summer. Tree Haven has a 1,000-acre working tree farm and is the oldest operating tree farm in Wisconsin. Please join me as we welcome our next honoree, Dr. Biff Coomer, a friend of 45 years.
A few words, I wish. Yeah. I've never been able to say a few words. So I'll ramble for a couple of minutes, but I want to first say that this is truly an honor. That this honor represents a lot of men were given the opportunity at this institution have succeeded in life. And I just represent them. And this is a true honor for me today. You know, Parsons taught me about unity. It taught me about camaraderie, about the importance of depending on other people. I came into this program here at this school in a different frame of mind, and I want to make an analogy of what Parsons has done for me over the years. It's pretty basic, but I came in here back in 1961, and I was not exactly stable. And the fellows that I met here, I won't say they weren't stable, but they were a little rocky. And we had some good times here. We went to school occasionally, and this was a catalyst for a lot of things. But the comparison I want to make is that if you're in a lumber business and you work with pulp, we cut a lot of pulp. And when you cut pulp, you take a log and you cut it down and you put it on a truck, and the truck goes to a pulp mill. And in a pulp mill, that piece of log is cleaned. It's highly sprayed, under pressure, what have you. It goes down a chute, it goes into these vats, heavy water, hot water, and what have you. It breaks all down the fibers and what have you. And the long and short is it comes out on a conveyor belt and it's mush. Many of you remember what pablum was when we were young. We had pablum. That's exactly what pulp looks like after that treatment's been just dissolved. All the tissue and what have you is just mushed down and what have you. It goes on this long conveyor belt, and that's where I was when I came to the school. And I was I won't say mush, but I certainly wasn't where I am today. And in that process of this conveyor belt, there's a middle of that conveyor belt that basically is an area that this pulp goes on underneath, and there's tremendous heat, and there's pressure, and there's light, and there's wind. It's a drying process, and it takes maybe 15 to 20 yards. And at the end of that, it comes out paper. It's like a psychic change. It changes from mush to paper, from mush to substance. That's what this college did for this man and for a lot of the guys that I went to school with here. And it was a catalyst. It was a catalyst for something that came out that was strong, that had eyes, that could see, that was able to think for himself, for ourselves. It taught me how to read. It taught me how to write. This institution did. It taught me how to be a man. It taught me how to serve others. And I like to use that analogy because most of the people that I know at this college, that went through this college, were given a second chance. And this institution was the institution that gave us that second chance. And everyone, without an exception, that I know of in the group that I was with, has been successful in his endeavors in life. And I think that is that's something that we should be very proud of. It's an absolute, and we should be proud of that this institution was a catalyst for our successes. And because of that, the institution was made up of people, and those people allowed us to become who we are today. And that's a wonderful gift. It's an absolute gift. And I think of Parsons College every day. And I came back here a day early to go around to the old haunts. As we all know, change is constant. Things aren't the same, but they are the same. It's like we're in a big cocoon. It didn't matter if you were a teak or a Phi Sig or where the boys are, or a rummer, or Alpha Gamma, or Delta Zeta, or blah, 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 whatever. If we're all family. We're all interspersed, and we're all together like a big cocoon. We get into that cocoon, and here we are, from different age, 1936 to 1968 to 1973, and we're in the same room talking. It's like being in a big classroom, sharing. It's that camaraderie. It's the strength of unity. This institution taught me how to appreciate that and try to live that life. The three things that I live by today, and basically as I look back, I didn't realize it initially, but I trusted God, I clean my house, and I try to help people every day. And you know, I think that most of the guys that I went to school with here, who are successful, and they all are in their own rights, do the same thing. What a beautiful blessing. And I'm blessed to be here today, and representing a lot of other guys who aren't here today, but are my pals, and I still see them.
I go to blues festivals with them. You know, listen to blues music, eat all this Cajun food and stuff like that. And I love life, and I love the people in my life. And I hope you do too. And thanks a lot for being here. And thank you for having me. I don't know what else to say. I just think it's wonderful.
General Richard Lawson will be our next inductee. His brother, General Bud Lawson, will do the presentation.
Thank you, Dave. Let me start by saluting Fairfield and the alumni group that is, in effect, preserving the heritage of Parsons College. As a boy growing up in Fairfield, I think almost all of us expected to go to Parsons, followed Parsons athletics from the time that we were in grade school up through high school, and then even after I went to the University of Iowa to try to play football, I was following back to Fairfield to watch Parsons, because that's where my heart was. And for you to recognize those that made Parsons the great school it was is absolutely fitting. And I would say I only wish my dad was here, because Dad wanted all his sons to go to Parsons. And Mom, she's out in the nursing home. And yesterday we told her that we were going to assemble down here to put Dick's plaque on the Parsons Wall of Fame. And I will tell you, she couldn't be prouder. You know, before getting to the business of hand of introducing Dick, allow me to share with you a little experience. When I was the Adjutant General, I used to visit all of the armories every year. And I pulled into Burlington one day, and my public affairs officer said, there's a little reporter here that wants to talk to you, General. And I said, okay, and she'd like to have some specific questions. I said, okay. And so I met with this young 19, 20-year-old reporter from the Burlington Hawkeye Gazette, and the little gal said to me, what was your inspiration to become an officer? And I, not having faced that question before, I thought for a little bit, and I said I was faced with the draft when I was coming through school. But the big inspiration was my brother. He had already been on active duty 4 years, and I was in ROTC at the University of Iowa, and Dick was urging me, I've had 4 years of it. My career's going well, and you ought to think about that as a career. And her next question was even more surprising to me, because she said, "Who was your military hero?" I'd never thought about that. And I again answered, "My brother." And she said, "Who is your brother? Who is this guy?" And I said, "Well, he's a lad that grew up in Fairfield, went to Parsons College, volunteered for active service with the 133rd Tactical Control Squadron up at Fort Dodge, went from the medics in here in Fairfield up to Fort Dodge, became an officer, went on active duty with them, and from that, starting as a second lieutenant, went through all the chairs to become the European commander of all American forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. From the North Pole, down through the plains of Europe, down to the Middle East, through the continent of Africa, and clear to the Cape of Africa. 71 countries under his responsibility. Over 500,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Oh, indeed, over 22 awards when he retired, from significant awards when he retired in 1986. And so is it any wonder that this is my hero? Well, I will tell you, he left active duty in 1986 and became the president of the United States Coal Association, and went from the Coal Association to merge it with the United States Mining Association. And then for 14 years headed up that association. And then he has got a raft of follow-on responsibilities, to include being the chairman of the World Mining Foundation. And then from that viewpoint, influenced safety and environment and all sorts of concerns about mining. He is currently the chairman of the Energy, Environment, and Security Group. That is a company that he organized. He's still active, travels worldwide. Oh, indeed. Here I would like to present you with a man that's done 41 years of active military service, 35 years of active military service, 41 years of total military service, and 24 years of civilian leadership in the field of mining of coal and other metals. I would like to present to you General Richard Lawson, to the Parsons College Wall of Fame.
It won't take but a minute. You must forgive my brother. He does get a bit carried away. Not that what he said wasn't true, but the fact is he
always kind of looked up. I suppose somewhere, sometime, I will have the same opportunity and I will be just as... I do accept this with some trepidation. In 1972, I was called back by Parsons to make some remarks at a commencement, and at the same time, the Air Force ROTC program at Parsons was renamed the Richard L. Lawson Air Force ROTC. And the following year, they closed the school. And so I'm hoping that this will not have any negative impact upon the follow-on activities of the Alumni Association. I want to share in the remarks of my predecessors here today in thanking the members of the Alumni Association for this effort, not so much because of something personal, but much more importantly for the importance of preserving the heritage of this school. I cannot overstate the impact that Parsons had on all aspects of my life. And there are so many times that when in the darkness of an hour associated with decisions, I went back to what would they say at Parsons? How would those people look at it? I always felt that the foundation of goodness and responsibility and caring for fellow man was prevalent in my every action here. And that understanding, that feeling that I started out my life with assisted in everything that I did. And I owe that, I think, as Dr. Cumber said, to the relationships that were established here. A very special time and place. Thank you all very much.
Our next inductee is Roger Nielsen, and I would like to call John Blackstock, one of my colleagues with the Parsons College Foundation, as well as the Alumni Association, to be the presenter. John.
Good morning, and wow. Wow and double wow. What a distinguished class of honorees. What a diversified class of honorees. Congratulations to all of you and all of you on your way up. With today's induction ceremony, we're now up to 19 members of the Parsons College Wall of Honor. And I'm honored to be presenting one of the honorees. Roger Nielsen. Roger Nielsen. Teacher, coach, and counselor to many. He was an athlete and he was a leader. Roger was a talented star both on and off the field before he came to Parsons College. As an athlete, what he achieved his freshman year has never been done before in the history of Parsons College, nor was it ever accomplished after. First of all, it was unheard of that an athlete would play 4 sports. It was even more amazing that if an athlete played 4 sports, that he would letter in all 4 sports. But what's most incredible about Roger Nielsen is that he played 4 sports, lettered in 4 sports, and won 4 varsity letters his freshman year. It's never been done in the history of Parsons College. But Roger didn't stop there. He was just getting started. He went on to earn a total of 13 varsity letters during his 4 years at Parsons College in the sports of football, basketball, baseball, and track. No doubt, if the college would have offered bowling, golf, and tennis, he probably would have won letters in those too. He was a hard-nosed competitor from the get-go. Roger capped off his senior year by leading both the Parsons football and basketball teams to Iowa Conference championships. On the gridiron, as quarterback and team leader, he ran and passed the team to an undefeated season. Then he followed that up by leading the fast-breaking Wildcats basketball team under Coach O.B. Nelson to its 2nd conference title of the year. But you know what? Getting to the Parsons College Wall of Honor is not just about sports. As we mentioned, Roger was also a leader, and he was an organizer. He was a teacher and a counselor and a coach, and he impacted many. Following graduation in 1956, Roger joined the Parsons Physical Education Department. The diversified Roger, at one time or another, coached just about every sport. And he is credited with starting up and bringing the men's varsity tennis program to the college. As a freshman, I remember distinctly Coach Nielsen as my physical education instructor. Some teachers and coaches you just remember, and some you just don't remember. I'm not sure if I was a good PE student or not, or what a good PE student was, and I certainly would appreciate it if you did not ask Biff Comer, Dr. Biff Comer. But I remember Roger Nielsen vividly. He stood out from the others. He was intense, and he was focused. There was no doubt who was in charge. He was no nonsense. He was quiet. He didn't say much. He did. You listened. I respected Coach Nielsen. He was certainly a model of a leader. In the mid-60s, when Dr. Roberts accelerated his expansion program and planted the satellite college about, he endorsed the selection of Roger to head up the athletic program at Midwestern College in Denison. That was confirmation of the confidence Dr. Roberts and the college had in his ability to organize, and Roger did not disappoint. He even started up the varsity women's tennis program at Midwestern before things began to unravel. But it was not Roger Nielsen that unraveled, it was Parsons College. Parsons was the disappointment. The college's demise and ultimate closing also led to the shutdown of Midwestern College. But Roger and his family liked Denison, Iowa, and they decided to stay. So he began teaching in the Denison Community School District. Initially, he taught at the middle school level, but his sports interest and knowledge vaulted him to coaching at the varsity level and varsity sports. For the next 22 years, Roger Nielsen, the teacher, the coach, the counselor, would impact the lives and the careers of many, many students, working to prepare them to succeed, preparing them for success. Roger's now retired and living in Iowa City. Wife Barbara reports they moved to Iowa City to focus on family and Hawkeye sports. In addition, however, Roger has found another focus, the Senior Olympics. But not just focusing on the Senior Olympics, but competing in the Olympics and winning medals. As we understand it, he's done just that. Rogers won a number of senior Olympic medals in a variety of sports. Very unfortunately, Roger could not be here today. He had a conflict, which led us to wonder if perhaps that conflict was maybe the pursuit of another gold medal in the Senior Olympics. But one thing is for sure, Roger Nielsen's Parsons College Wall of Honor plaque is here today, and it's here to stay. Thank you.
Bill Pedrick would please come forward. He played tennis for Roger Nielsen when he was attending Parsons, so he will be an excellent representative on this.
I've been given the opportunity to say a few words about Roger, but they might be incriminating. On one occasion, I reported for practice with a stomach ache, and I'll never forget, he gave me a lemon drop. It was not my most admirable moment on the court. I have had the opportunity to visit with him, and I've told him that I'm very disappointed that he's not here today. But later on, I do have pictures of Coach Nielsen and some of those semi-flattering tennis shorts that I donned during the time that I played from 60 to 64. So catch up at lunch on that score.
Our next inductee is Willard Pedrick. We're asking Bill to do double time and recognize his father in the presentation. Bill Pedrick.
Willard Pedrick, my father, had deep Fairfield roots. He was born and raised right here, graduated as a Fairfield Trojan. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there were 3 women in his life who had immeasurable impact. First, there was his mother, Rachel Lumsden Pedrick, who made it possible for 21 students, including yours truly, to attend Parsons, providing them with a roof and sumptuous meals. My mother, Jane McGinnis, whose considerable musical talents found fruition once she had donned a Parsons beanie. And my stepmother, who's with us today, Joanne Pedrick, who was a loving, lovely, sagacious mate who complimented my father during his middle and later years, and yes, remains an impassioned Democrat. Though most voted, most likely to succeed by his 1936 graduating classmates, my father had much to overcome. His father was a traveling hardware salesman, so my father had to wear the label of pedalty rake early on. Also, he had an inordinate fondness for sauerkraut juice and sardines, and he suffered from what I term the Walter Mitty syndrome. Thomas Edison, he wasn't. For example, he came up with a double berth bunk bed arrangement for the back of a Ford Falcon which lacked nose clearance. You can ask my sister Sarah about that. Then there was a canoe conveyance, which relied on a bicycle tire. It was great on straight paths. There were very few of those on Isle Royal. Yet even as a Parsons undergraduate, he was a man of principle. He organized a protest against mandatory daily chapel attendance, and the net result was 3 chapel attendance per week. Later, as an upstart law professor, he systematically debunked Senator Joseph McCarthy in a 51-page scholarly treatise that appeared in the Northwestern University Law Review. This was incidentally published in 1953, well before McCarthy's precipitous fall from grace. Dad was an eternal optimist. As a Cubs fan, he had to be. Following a triple bypass surgery, he commented, "I've always been game for new experiences, and this certainly qualifies." He could be very persuasive. He was the national champion in extemporaneous speaking as a junior in 1935, wowing the judges with his take on the future of farming in the United States. Finally, my father had a Rolodex joke bank. So here goes, Dad. They're a group of chess champions who are eagerly recreating their successes in a recent tournament in the lobby of a New York hotel. They were reliving in staggering detail each and every triumphant move. After an hour, the manager of the hotel burst forth, "You guys are going to have to get out of here." The captain of the chess team questioned that decision. The manager responded, "I can't tolerate chestnuts boasting in an open foyer." So Dad would offer, "Be a gracious winner." He certainly was. Thank you. Both of my sisters will be coming forth to help deliver the goods.
Our next inductee is Commander Larry Spencer. If Larry Unkrich would please come forward to provide the presentation.
Good morning. My name is Larry Unkrich. I was raised here in town and graduated from local high school, went to Parsons, went away for a few years and returned to my roots like so many of us seem to have a tendency to do. Last winter sometime, Kay and I ran into Dave and Sherry out of Walton, and he just mentioned to me, would you have anyone that you can think of that would be a good candidate for this honor? And I think it was immediate, and to me it was a no-brainer. I just popped up, yes, Larry Spencer. And so as time went along, and Larry and Dave got together, things evolved, and here we are at this time. Larry came to Parsons from Earlham, Iowa. He came in the fall of 1958. He became a SIGEP, of which I was a member at the time, in 1959. He was a math major. I too was a math major, so that meant even more dialogue between us and get to knowing one another. He graduated with honor in 1962. He joined the Navy in February of 1963. He was on the USS Enterprise, assigned there in 1965, and of course it was in Vietnam. He was shot down on February the 18th, 1966. He was a POW for, I say 7 years. He says 7 years minus 6 days, and I'll bet you he remembers that well. He retired as a commander in 1985, and he returned to his roots in Iowa in 1995, and Larry and his wife live in West Des Moines. I knew him at Parsons, as I said, because of the math relationship primarily, and that would have been through Vic Rail. And I know many of you remember Vic Rail, and he brought a lot of people together and did a lot for all of us, including the two Larrys. You know, we haven't been necessarily close. We've always been friends, but I stayed in contact through Vic. When Larry was a POW, he would kind of, or we would keep each other updated. But there were some other connections. For example, Dr. Roberts has been mentioned a time or two here, and I tutored Dr. Roberts' daughters in math when I was there. When I graduated and left, Larry took my spot in doing that. And I thought that was kind of unique. He also remembered Hell Week. I don't know how many of you remember that, but we talked about that a little bit last night. You know, there's a lot of things that stick in your mind about that. We lived in the basement of the SIGEP house. We took care of a pig. It was very important that everybody took care of the pig. We wore really unusual underwear. We got up at odd hours through the night for one reason or another. And we had scavenger hunts. And it's kind of neat to reminisce about things like that. You go through life and you establish friendships, and maybe you don't see people for even 20 years. But if they're true friends, when you re-meet them or reconnect with them, you pick up right where you were when you last saw them. And that's a relationship I think that I've had with Larry. Every time we're together, for one reason or another, I learn a little bit more about his being a POW. And I don't know why, but I'm just kind of interested in learning things like that. And last night was no different. He was talking to Dr. Tree, and he said something that just kind of went right over my head, and so we went back to it. But he said they had class when he was a POW, and he being from Iowa, he taught the others in his group of 40 or so what the geography of Iowa was. And he being a math major, he held math classes because some of them were not in tune with math. So I think that's kind of interesting to learn about those things. And I'm very proud and very humble to have the honor to make this presentation on Larry's behalf. I think we all owe people like him a great debt of gratitude for their sacrifices in keeping us free and protecting us. I thank you.
And his professionalism. And I was very fortunate to be kind of taken under his wing. One of the first things he did was he gave me the opportunity to be an assistant to Tib Young, and I corrected general math papers for 3 years. And Tib Young's example of being a gentleman formed a basis for my relationships with others. I was not the only Parsons graduate who found their way to Hanoi as a prisoner of war. General Lawson and I talked last night about one of his classmates and fraternity brothers, Jack Bomar, who was an Air Force major when shot down over North Vietnam, and he spent about 6 years in there. And people who had heard about Parsons could not believe that this little school in Iowa had 2 of us there in Hanoi. Life takes lots of changes in direction. It's not a straight line from where you started out to where you are today. And that's true of all of us. But it's the people you meet and the things that you learn along the way that make a lasting impact. And Parsons was the basis of my adult life. I lived with men there who had graduated from West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, UCLA, Rutgers, you name it. And it was my steadfast belief and my experience that the education I received at Parsons took a second place to none of them. One of the most influencing things of my Parsons career was that we started the humanities program that was associated with the University of Chicago my freshman year. The whole college studied the world of the Greeks and Romans that year. And at the beginning of each month, a professor from the University of Chicago rode the train out here and gave an all-school lecture in the chapel. We all studied the same book, and we had a test at the end of the month. But that's the type of thing that you got at Parsons that you didn't get at other schools. At Parsons, you had Vic Rail and Bob Tree teaching your freshman history and math course instead of some graduate assistant. Parsons was spectacular. And I'm very honored to be selected to be a participant in this Wall of Honor. So thank you, Parsons, and thank all of you.
Next inductee is Susan Fulton Welty. John Braidwood, one of my colleagues that I mentioned earlier in the Foundation Fund and Alumni Association, will provide the presentation. Mr. Braidwood. Although I ever have a special treat for you people, it's indeed my sincere pleasure to introduce to you Susan Fulton Welty. In short-term words, what an extraordinary lady. She was born in Fairfield in 1903. Her father was the United States Senator. She graduated from Parsons College in 1927 with a Bachelor of Science in Biology. But her academic achievements did not stop there. The University of Utah and earned a master's degree in speech. This would be the precursor to what would be a brilliant career in writing. While at Parsons, she was the editor of
the portfolio, and incidentally, wrote the words to our alma mater. On September 2nd, 1930, she married Dr. Cho Carl Welty, who was a professor of biology at Parsons College from 1926 to 1934. Subsequently, Professor Welty and Susan moved to Beloit, Wisconsin, where Professor Welty became Dean of Biology at the academically esteemed Beloit College. Susan soon discovered that her passion was writing. As a matter of fact, over her career, now feature this just for a minute, please listen carefully. Over her career, she authored over 32 publications and books. Described by a personal friend, she was small in stature, long braided hair, cute, appealing, articulate, and well-versed on an amazing amount of subjects. Susan Welty was for the birds. She authored The Bird Banders, Conservation by Common Consent, and co-authored, now please listen to this carefully, she co-authored with her husband, The Life of Birds. In its third edition, it became the most widely used textbook on ornithology in the United States. As a matter of fact, one would have to look at John Audubon to find another author who had more impact on bird study than Carl and Susan Welty. Prolific and diverse in her writings would be an understatement. As an example, she authored Knight's Ransom, a non-fiction book written for children about medieval falconry. Look Up in Hope, a biography of Maud Ballington Booth, known as the Little Mother of Prisons. And get this, she authored The Man Who Invented Miles Per Hour, a biography of A.P. Warner. I don't know if you're familiar with Warner gauges, but they are often, or they were in position in many cars. And this article was published in Car and Life magazine in 1957. And of course, most of you are familiar with the book A Fairfield, a wonderful biography of our beloved Fairfield. Yes, she was so very, very special. And today, she so very deservedly becomes a permanent member of the Parsons College Wall of Honor. Would you please welcome Vera Young, who will accept this award. And Susan Wells.
Our next inductee is Lewis Big Lou Wilson. Jerry Staten, are you in the audience? Jerry Staten is with us, former classmate and teammate of Big Lou Wilson. Welcome.
I would like to see a show of hands of everybody in the room that knew Obie Nelson. Raise your hand if you knew him. I thought so. Dr. Tree, I was a teak, he was our faculty advisor, and I've got some great Dr. Tree stories. Coach Nielsen was one of my coaches. I could tell some on him. But I know Dr. Tree's mine. I'm not going to deal with that yet. He'll be nearer the podium when I get done than I am, so I want to leave him alone. But I do have to share one OB story. It's a great one. They're taping for a game. He's got a green jacket and a green tie on. He's taping this kid's ankle. He takes his tie and he throws it up here. He's taping in the tie, falls back over the ankle. He throws it back over his shoulder, falls back down again. The third time, he took some scissors, cut it off right here, threw it down and said, that took care of that. Somebody said OB was one of a kind. The person I'm going to honor today is also one of a kind. Big Lou Wilson. The first time I saw this gentleman, I'd been a starter for 2 years. And we won a conference championship. I was feeling pretty good about my spot on the team. They didn't tell us he was coming. They just brought him out on the field. And they couldn't find a jersey big enough. They had to cut the sleeves off. He walked out. He was 6'2", 265 pounds. And I'm thinking, please, Lord, don't have him be a front side pulling guard. But I didn't have to compete with him. They put him beside me, and I got to play with him on that football team. He was an All-American lineman. He was a shot putter. He then went on to sign a contract with the Minnesota Vikings, playing with Fran Tarkington, Vic Tingelhoff, and Jim Marshall. He then coached and taught school in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the next 7 years. He was also the Wisconsin coordinator of a higher education talent search for college-bound students. Then when the Boys and Girls Club of America needed a director in Milwaukee, Lou Wilson was a shoo-in, and in no time he became the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club in Kansas City. But that's just what he did. That wasn't who he was. And who he was is really important. He had a big heart. He was a very caring person, a giant little man, but he had a tremendous heart and love for his fellow students and friends. I had a bypass surgery, and I coded, was out for 20 minutes with CPR. They took him back in for another 4.5 hours, so 8.5 hours I was in heart surgery, and it knocked me flat. And finally, after about a month, they let me go home, and I'm laying in bed trying to get back, and the phone rings. And there it was, Big Lou, calling to see how he found out. I don't know, way down in Kansas City, but he wanted to see how I was. And then, from then on, every week he would call to see how I was doing. He had big courage. He fought this diabetes thing like a champion. I got to go see him toward the very end, and they just brought him back from the dialysis. And that must really wear you out because he was a tired young man. And we were there about a half hour, and when I got ready to go, he hasn't said anything, but I got down and I whispered in his ear. And I told him how much we loved him and how his football brothers were pulling for him to get up off this bed and come back and be with us. And that one day we'd all be together again. And he blinked his eyes twice. I think he was trying to tell me that he heard and understood. He and his beautiful wife came to visit us in Oskaloosa. They were a little late getting there because they went to Osceola first. Osceola, Oskaloosa sounds the same, but they're in opposite directions. But while they were sitting there, the glow on his face when he spoke about his 2 daughters and when he talked about his grandchildren was very obvious. And the way he said his wife's name spoke of the great love he had for her. And I shed tears when he left us, tears of joy that I had the privilege of knowing him and associating with him. And I'm a better person for having been a teammate of this wonderful person. And in this old world of give and take, there are not enough men who have what it takes. But there was at least one, Big Lou Wilson. So I proudly present to you for induction, Big Lou Wilson.
up there for your dad. The whole game there. Veronica and Meredith, whose daughters?
There, my friends, is your second annual class, Parsons College Wall of Honor. We have quite a diverse group and quite a lot of smiling faces. We're very, very thankful for that. At this point, I have another gentleman that I'm going to recognize from the audience who is a visionary. He is a Bell Lab engineer, retired from Chicago and moved to Fairfield. When the Barhide Chapel was getting ready to be dismantled, he said, we cannot let the Barhide organ go into the rubble pile. It must be saved. He had never dealt with a pipe organ before, but being a man that was not afraid to learn, he gathered all the information that he could. And pipe by pipe, wire by wire, the Barhide Chapel organ was dismantled. It was put in storage for 8 years. Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, the Stephen Sondheim Theater for the Performing Arts was on the drawing board, and we knew there would be a spot for the Barhide Chapel organ. As this theater was being completed, our next gentleman that I'm going to recognize took these pieces of pipe individually and put them back up in the 2 lofts that are on either side of the stage that you can see. And he, along with a good close friend of Parsons, Bob Glocky, took time to tune and climb up and down the catwalk. And I don't know how many times, but from what John told me, it's over 2,000 hours of volunteer time that John Connick has done to make this work. And so at this time, I would ask John if he would stand and please recognize him for his labor of love in preserving Barhide organ. As a special treat for you, we have invited one of our local instrumentalist, photographer, graphic artist, Werner Elmker, to provide about a 10-minute presentation on the Barhide organ for your enjoyment, so you know that it sounds as good, if not better, than it did in the chapel. Werner. Here, as John was putting this together, he said it was always in a permanent position in the Barhide Chapel, but on this stage it needs to be mobile. So all of the controls and everything have been upgraded technology with computers. We have 2 wires that connect the console to the pipes. To me, it's an amazing feat, but it sounds beautiful. Werner Elmker. great thanks to Werner for sharing his talents and John Conant for over 2,000 hours to make this possible. Now, without further ado, many times the announcement was made, Elvis has left the building, but Gobble has entered the auditorium. Mr. Lee T. Gobble. If you would please take your bulletins, turn to the very back page, flip your bulletin over, and if you would please stand, we will honor our alma mater, written by Susan Fulton Welty. If you would please stand, we will have the music for that presentation. Exit the auditorium by this south door, our alumni hall. You may have seen when you came in, there is a drape covering our honorees plaques, but we would like to invite the honorees to be in front of that, and then the rest of you can stand to the outside and fill in after the honorees are in place. Thank you very much for your attendance. We will do the unveiling and then move across the atrium for our luncheon.